Hello and welcome to season 12 of Raising Healthy Mothers. If you are listening to this in the week that the episode actually goes live, I hope you had a wonderful summer and a peaceful return to routine this week, whether that's back to school, back to work for you, or you just feel like the end of summer marks a feeling of being able to start anew and maybe just get your head back in the game because the summer fun is over and now we're kind of getting into that cooler autumn vibe. And if September brings to you that fresh start feeling, maybe a bit like New Year's with your resolutions, then you're not alone. And there's a really good reason for it, because over summer, I've been reading a brilliant book called How to Change by Katy Milkman. And I found it incredibly illuminating to help me understand why I sometimes struggle to start and maintain new habits, and why my clients do as well, how they struggle to kind of maintain the positive changes that we might talk about during our sessions together. And it's given me some really brilliant insights into how I can help motivate my clients to create that lasting change that we want, so that they are healthy for kind of create lifelong changes, not just in the moment when we're working together. And that's true of those who work with me one-to-one or do short programs with me, or, if you're just here for the free stuff. I want all of you, everyone, myself included, to create lifelong changes to healthy habits. So if you've been listening to this podcast for a while, you might know that one of my big struggles is my screen time use around my children, especially on my phone. I'm really awful for getting distracted by my phone, getting annoyed with my children for interrupting me when I'm responding to a post, usually on Facebook, to a complete stranger who mean nothing to me compared to my children. And then just spending way longer on my phone than I would like in the evenings after they've gone to sleep, rather than coming down and spending some quality time with my husband. So in this episode, I am actually going to dive into what I've learned from the book, distilling it down into 7 clear steps to create lasting habit changes, and showing you how I'm going to try and use these steps to break this habit of using my phone too much and start a new habit of being much more present with my children and with myself and my husband as well, and just feel generally a lot more in control of my life and household when it comes to time management. And as a specific goal, I would like to get my phone usage down to just 1 hour a day by December. It's quite an ambitious goal, actually, because at the moment I'm averaging sort of 2.5 to 3 hours a day, if not more on some days. It kind of averages out across a week to about 3 hours a day. It's a big change. In the book, Katy Milkman describes achieving transformational behaviour change as more like treating a chronic disease rather than a rash. You can't just put a bit of cream on it and expect it to clear up in a day or two like we might with a rash. The barriers we face when it comes to change are deeply rooted, and overcoming them takes time and practice and a lot of repetition. And the real kicker is those obstacles don't really go away once we start treating them, because we need constant vigilance to maintain that change. Lifelong habits that we want to break requires lifelong vigilance about that change, because the habits we want to break, according to Katy, are often due to laziness, forgetfulness, temptation, or underconfidence in our ability to make change happen. In other words, those habits that we want to break, are the path of least resistance for us. They are the easier option. It's always easier to take the simpler way, isn't it? But it is possible to create lasting change because, for example, not brushing your teeth is the easier, lazier option. But most of us don't habitually skip brushing our teeth. And when we do, we notice it. And you know how you feel fresher and cleaner after brushing your teeth? Well, toothpaste manufacturers made toothpaste minty so that you enjoy that good, fresh, clean, minty feeling, and it motivates us to do it again. And therefore, we want to use more toothpaste. It's clever, right? It's a marketing strategy, but it works, and it's worked to instill that habit within us, because we like that feeling. It's a rewarding feeling. But I'm getting ahead of myself. So in reading this book, I realised that it couldn't have come at a better time, with September starting and the summer holidays ending, because step 1 is the fact that the ideal time to pursue a change in a habit, to break a new habit, and to create a new habit, is to do it when there is a marked date or time to indicate this fresh start feeling. Whether that's the start of a new year, that's when most of us make resolutions that we want to keep to kind of see a difference in this next year coming. a milestone birthday, so for example, of turning 40, maybe you have a health scare and that kind of creates a need for a fresh start. Or, as in the case for me, September, which marks the end of school holidays, the end of summer season, and the return to a more predictable routine that feels like I can put in place changes because I know my days are going to look much more similar and consistent. So it's why when we are naturally inclined to set New Year's resolutions, or maybe even think of Monday as like a fresh start after having like a weekend of indulgence. You know, you get the partying, the slip up of habits, the overindulgence out of the way, recognize that we're not feeling great for it, and we're ready for a change, maybe something that feels a little bit more austere that might not have worked for us during the holiday season or during the weekend. But the problem is we tend to rush headlong into making these resolutions and relying on willpower and motivation to keep us going. And remember, lifelong habits that we're looking to break is due to taking the path of least resistance. So if we just want to rely on willpower, it's never going to work because that's not helping us remove or overcome those resistance, that easier option that's always there. So identifying the right time to make a change is step one. It's one step on this way to get there. It's a huge help, definitely, but it's only part of it. So step two, the next step, is to break down that goal into bite-sized chunks. So this one is really important because it's easy to say, I want to lose weight or I want to reduce my dependence on my phone as I am. But in reality, it's a huge task. It's a big thing. It feels amorphous and nebulous. So if you can break it down into easy step-by-step action points, then you're much more likely to succeed because there's less of an obstacle in your way. It also means that you don't have to think about what you need to do because you've already made the plan. You don't have to make a decision in the moment. You don't have to be faced with a choice and think, well, do I do A or B? You've already made that decision. You know what your plan is in the moment. You've already made that decision, and that just makes such a big difference to your ability to follow through with it. And in creating a plan, you've made a pledge to yourself, which you're going to find out later is a really important part of it. So for me, breaking the phone habit feels like a big task, okay? It's like I currently spend 3 or 4 hours on it every day. I want to get it down to 1 hour. Wow, that's big. But if I identify my problem points, I know that first thing in the morning, last thing at night, putting the kids to bed, in the toilet, embarrassingly, those are my problem points. And also when I hear a notification when I'm, spending time with the children, that is more likely to draw me away because I've heard that notification and I need to go and answer it right away. But if I've identified those problem points, then I can start to make a plan for each one using the habit changes that are coming later. So step 3 is where we kind of really get into the nitty-gritty of how to actually make change happen. So this step is Katy Milkman calls temptation bundling. So this is where you maybe engage in a guilty pleasure while doing something valuable or virtuous. Or in other words, using her example, add a spoonful of sugar to the medicine, just like Mary Poppins sings in the song. So this has a really lovely two-pronged benefit of helping to reduce overindulgence and temptation because you have kind of got a plan on when you're going to indulge in that temptation while increasing the time that you spend on your long-term goal. So we often know what we want in the longer term. We want to be healthier, more energized, more present with our children, but we forget that the same thing stopping us from doing those things now will still be there in weeks and months and years to come. So we need to get to the point where doing the thing that will get us to our long-term goal is as tempting as the opposite. In other words, there's no point loading up your shopping trolley with kale and quinoa and chicken if you don't have a plan on how to make those things taste nice, if you think they don't taste nice already. There's no point starting Couch to 5K if you know you hate running. You've got to start with something that you actually know you're going to enjoy. And if you think about it another way, have you ever practiced playful parenting or acted silly to get your children to do something you want them to do, like get dressed or tidy up? It's really effective, isn't it? And the thing that we forget is as adults, we're not very different from our children. We are also more likely to do something boring or uninteresting or that we hate if we make it more fun. So the more fun we can make a difficult job, the more likely we are to actually do it. So with my problem in mind, that I use my phone too much around my children, and the positive activity that I want to start, being more present with my children, I could have a rule that I only check my phone while I'm having a cup of tea, during a naturally quiet moment, for example, when they're having a snack or when they're engaged in independent play. Another way to think of it is to use gamification. So this is where that kind of playful aspect comes in a little bit, using symbolic rewards or a sense of competition to achieve your goal. And I find this one quite interesting because a lot of positive parenting, we're often encouraged not to use things like sticker charts or praise for rewards, and instead trying to build on intrinsic motivation, only praising the effort if any praise is needed at all. So I guess in this sense, gamification helps to make the process more fun. So rather than sort of necessarily rewarding the end result, making the process more enjoyable, more fun, rather than, having a specific one-off reward at the end. So with my habit change in mind, I could have a rule that for every 30 minutes of uninterrupted playtime with my children, I earn 5 minutes of phone time. Or because this is something that I'm actually doing with my husband, I could have a tick chart where we compete against each other. Maybe for every time we don't bring our phone into the bathroom when we're on the loo. Yes, I know it's gross. I know, but I know you do it too. So every time we don't bring our phone into the bathroom, we get a green tick on the chart. And when we do bring it in, we get a red cross. Obviously, we need to trust each other's honesty here. But hey, we're adults after all. Hopefully, we have the integrity to kind of play this fairly. But that gives us a really visual image of how well we're doing or not. How many greens are there? How many reds are there? So then step 4 is what Katy Milkman calls creating a commitment device. This is something that reduces your freedom in the pursuit of that greater goal. So this could take in many forms, from as simple as making a public pledge that you're going to make a particular change to putting money on the line if things don't work out. So for example, I'm centering this entire episode on this topic of creating kind of lasting change, and I have made a public pledge. I have said to you, I'm going to do this by December. This is what I'm going to have achieved. My commitment is that by the end of the season, I will update you on my progress. Maybe the last episode of the season of Raising Healthier Mothers, I'm going to say to you, hey, remember that first episode of this season? Well, guess what? This is what's changed. This is what I have to report on. Hopefully, it's going to be a positive report that I have achieved just 1 hour of phone usage a day by then. And then building on this gamification of the previous step, my husband and I could take it a step further and have a punishment if we get a certain number of red crosses, such as if we get a certain... So building on the gamification of the previous step, my husband and I could take it a step further and have a punishment for if we get a certain number of red crosses on our tick chart a day. Maybe we have to do each other's most hated job for a week. Having that punishment deter us from getting those red crosses. And also, when we want to have a winning streak, right? We want to have as many green ticks as we possibly can. The next step is to set timely reminders, but they need to be done at the best time, at the correct time. So in her book, Katy says that the best reminders are set immediately before you want to remember to do something. So not a day before or even a couple of hours before. It needs to be immediately before you want to remember that thing. Since the habit that I am trying to change, which is my phone usage, it's kind of continuous rather than something that happens at a set time. I could have quite random reminders throughout the day to remind me to remain present, or even just asking me that if I'm picking up my phone, do I need to do that thing right now? And if I do, could I maybe use my laptop instead? I'm much less likely to get sucked into things on my laptop. So if I have a reminder that just sort of says, is this important? Does it have to happen now? It's just going to kind of trigger that, oh yeah, maybe I can just put this back down again. I could also use physical things like sticky notes stuck up in strategic places to remind myself of my goal. Maybe I could put it by the play area or by the kettle to say, are you being present? Are you on your phone? If I know that one of my big struggles is when I put them to bed and I'm scrolling on my phone after they've fallen asleep, then I could set a reminder at 7:30 to hand my phone over to my husband to have it confiscated for that time. And then similar to this is creating cue-based plans. So this is where you link a plan of action with a cue. So when X happens, I will do Y. For example, when the children are having snack time, I'll make a cup of tea and I'll spend 10 minutes replying to WhatsApp messages. Or when I walk into the living room, I will put my phone in the phone basket on the shelf. Or when I sit down for meal times, I put my phone on charge in the hallway. Or when the children are putting on their pajamas, I turn off my phone. The cue needs to be quite specific and it needs to have a strong trigger to create a particular behaviour. It also makes sense to not have too many things at once. Like if I put all of those as my triggers, I'm going to forget. So maybe I'll do one a week, and then if that kind of embeds in, maybe I'll add another one, next week or in a few days. Otherwise, I'll just forget about all the different triggers, and then they won't be as strong. The next step, step 6, is to change your default setting for a particular behavior. Ultimately, habits are our default setting. So this step is about changing that default to a better one, a good one. So using the habit that I'm trying to change as an example, I can remove all notifications other than those that are absolutely necessary, or I can put my phone on silent or have the do not disturb setting on when I want to be there with my children. I can use apps that block access to apps on my phone, or sometimes they might even shut down your phone after a certain time, completely black it out and say there's nothing more to do here. I can change my homepage to remove all the fun apps so that they're not the first thing that I go to when I unlock my phone. You can even change your phone to be more grayscale, and that kind of puts us off, makes it harder to find the apps that we want to find because it's not using those color triggers that we're so used to. Or I could use my accountability buddy, my husband, to restrict my access. As I said, I know I'm particularly bad at being on my phone when I'm putting my kids to sleep, but I do use my phone to listen to audiobooks while they're falling asleep. That's how they like to fall asleep. So I could set it up so that my phone is blocked from usage at 8 o'clock other than using audiobooks, or I could simply swap phones with my husband and use audiobooks on his phone and avoid the temptation of scrolling on Instagram on my phone. And then the final step, and this is the one that I think had the biggest impact on me and I think is maybe the most overlooked, is being a part of a community of people. But further than that, being a mentor in that group, in that community. So I think this is really interesting. So the obvious one, obviously, I am in a community in the sense that my husband is my accountability buddy, and we have pledged to see these changes together. So we're going to keep each other accountable. But the next thing is that I also feel very strongly about minimizing screen time for my children. So I'm in various groups on Facebook and WhatsApp about reducing screen time for children. So it feels very hypocritical of me to not set a good example to my children. But then the next step after that, and the part in the book that I find the most intriguing and not really one I've come across before, is the fact that becoming a mentor or offering advice to achieve a specific goal that we want to achieve is going to help you get there. This was fascinating because I think we kind of assume that if I'm struggling with a goal, then I can't possibly advise someone else about it because I'm not very good at doing that goal. I need help myself. I need someone to tell me what to do. So we shouldn't advise others. But actually, the opposite is true. If you have a particular goal in mind, you've probably spent quite a bit of time thinking through, how am I going to make this change? And maybe even thinking up a million excuses and reasons why it won't work for you and overcoming them, thinking, well, okay, if that's not going to work it that way, then maybe I can do it this way. But if you're in a community and you see someone asking a question about something that you are struggling with, you will probably jump on and say, oh, I've thought about doing it like this. You probably have really good advice that you wish you could follow yourself. And by offering it to someone else, you are reminding yourself that actually you do know how to make change happen. I'm actually doing this right now on this podcast. I'm telling you how to create lasting change based on my reading of a book that had a huge impact on me. I'm offering ways to use these ideas to break down the habit that I want to change of being on my phone too much. In doing that, I'm clearly proving to myself that I do know what to do to make a change. I've spent a lot of time thinking about it. I spent all summer reading about it in this book, and I can create a strategy to achieve that goal. And that gives me the confidence to then convey that advice here on my podcast. And if I don't follow through, it's going to be hypocritical of me to offer that advice, but not actually do it myself. And I've actually used this really recently. Back in July, I ran a reset challenge week where I sent out a healthy meal plan to participants, and every day I advised them on how to make one small change towards being healthier. But the real reason I ran that reset week is because I needed a reset. I wanted to focus on making sure I get some healthy habits in place, but just before summer holidays started. So in offering the advice in the reset week, I was making progress on my own goals. And I love this concept because I think it's a brilliant way of building your self-confidence, building your self-belief in your ability to achieve those goals, and helping others in the process. It's such a great way of building that community. So there you have it, the 7 steps to create lasting change. So as a reminder, step 1, the best time to pursue change is at a fresh start date like September or New Year. Break the goal down into bite-sized chunks to make it manageable. Make it fun and rewarding. Find ways to gamify it or make it playful. Create a commitment, make a pledge out loud, and make it painful to break that pledge, maybe with money or a punishment. Create reminders that are set at the right time that is actually going to matter to you. Change your default setting. So if your habits are your default, then what are you going to do to make it the better one? And then find a community, give advice to others who want to achieve the same goal. So I gave you the habit that I want to change as an example. But how would this work if, say, your goal was to create healthy habits so that you can have the energy to be active and present with your children, and ultimately to enjoy a long, healthy life with your children, so you can be a strong support to your children into adulthood, and even maybe keep up with your grandchildren and be a positive presence in their life? It feels like a big goal, doesn't it? But using the habit changes that I've just discussed, you're going to start this month, September, because it's your fresh starting point. You're going to start working with a nutritionist. You might meet regularly for check-ins and accountability. You'll make healthy meal plans on a regular basis, and you're going to schedule your workouts into your calendar. You look for ways to make an activity that you struggle with enjoyable. You might use habit trackers and reminders to stay on track, and you might identify rewards that are going to keep you motivated. You might join a group dedicated to making healthy lifestyle changes and offer advice when a relevant question comes up. Maybe you'll become a mentor to someone who is struggling with the same goal as you. You create a clear plan for resisting temptations, such as looking ahead to your week, planning what you're going to eat before going to an event where you might be faced with temptation that you don't want to succumb to, or you might look at menus online so you can pre-select the healthy option before arriving at a restaurant. So as you can see, that's how you can kind of take this huge goal that feels massive and difficult and break it down and make a clear plan so that you can follow it through. As I said at the start, reading this book has given me some really great ideas on how I can use some of these methods to help my clients change. So I'm going to start using these in my one-to-one work, and I'm already thinking about how I can use them in my upcoming group programs. I'd already planned to run another reset this September, given how successful it was back in July. But I've now decided to call it Fresh Start September, because it is a fresh start, isn't it? And now I know how powerful it is to use those kind of time changes, that reset idea correctly. I love the idea of using mentors, and I can already see how those who have had success doing that reset last time in July are going to be brilliant mentors, because they've done it. They've sort of had the experience, and I know they want to do it again, and I know that they can offer some brilliant advice to those who are going to start fresh. And I love how in doing that, it's going to give them the additional benefit of keeping them motivated, because often when clients work with me, they are really motivated immediately after, but it doesn't take long for habits to slip. And that's why I find this book so powerful for me in creating that lasting change for my habits, because it's not about what you're going to do in the time that you're working with me, but about how it's going to create lifelong changes for you. So now that you have all the information that you need to create change, what are you going to do with it? What are your big goals? And how are you going to break it down to make it manageable? I'd love to hear from you. You can message me on Instagram at Tasha DeCruz, or email me at tasha@tashadecruz.com. And remember, when you do those things, you are going to be taking your first steps, because you're making a public declaration to me that this is the change you want to make, and you're getting accountable to me because you've told me that's what you're going to do. And I will email you and find out how you're getting on. So thank you so much for listening to this week's episode of Raising Healthy Mothers. I will see you again next week for the next episode. Bye for now.